We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today, November 2nd, 2023. Congratulations to the Texas Rangers from us at WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station and AM 950 radio. They won the World Series last night. Wow, almost swept the series. So, congratulations to them. Whew. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Congratulations to them. And we are now in the NBA season. And wow, it's just hockey season. It's wintertime, everybody. It's wintertime. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Woo. I am Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today. Call me at 773-763-9278. Can't believe it. They struck this camp over in Gaza one more time. And I'm going to have two people who are connected to it. Mr. Saker in the second hour has lost 39 relatives in Gaza. Nora Grajewski is Jewish American, and they are part of a group, Palestinian, Portland Palestinians and Jews. And I want us to talk with them about what they're experiencing and how this is all feeling. A lot of people, you have to be careful as you talk to people, or should I say be mindful, because as I talk to different friends, they have friends who are either hostages, they have friends who they have family, friends who've been killed. Because I have friends on the West Bank, in Tel Aviv, and in Gaza, such as my life. And so, you always want to know how people are doing, or, you're just deeply affected by this. I don't know anyone who isn't. I want you to join Congressman Jackson. A lot of you have registered already. You all have decided that you're going to come. Congressman Jackson is going to have on Sunday, November 5th, from 1 to 4 at the South Shore Cultural Center, right on 71st and South Shore Drive. There will be a town hall meeting on migrants. Might even get into the Mideast a little bit too, but certainly on the migrant crisis facing Chicago. And in fact, he sent a letter to the DOJ wanting them to launch an investigation, because he said now Greg Abbott is engaging in human trafficking. So, wow. And a whole list of other breaches of law that entail human trafficking. So let's talk about that. I hope you'll join us there from 1 to 2. You're going to have lunch. That's right. Just come there. We're providing lunch. And then from 2 to 4, we will have the town hall meeting. I know these things can get heated, but let's be very clear. What we want to do is disagree, if you do, without being disagreeable, and give full vent to your feelings, but understand that other people will want to talk. And let's create an environment in which we don't fix the blame, but we fix the problem. First of all, find out what your feelings are, what your thoughts are. We want to dispel the myths, all of that. So that is on Sunday from 1 to 4. Can't wait to see you there at the South Shore Cultural Center. Congressman Jonathan Jackson, the town hall meeting on the migrant crisis here in Chicago. But right now, of course, we're going to be talking with Dr. Max Wolf have you heard about the pharmacy walkouts? Yeah, many pharmaceutical workers have walked out protesting unsafe work conditions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk with him about that. And then we're going to talk about this really crackdown on people speaking out. And we're doing it personally and institutionally when it comes to this war. I know I've focused on this war a lot, but sirens blaring. It is becoming a world conflict. And I'm trying to figure out how America got in the middle of this. We were not trying to have a war with Iran, but Iran is saying, look, let me tell you something. If these bombings continue, not only are we coming for Israel, we're coming for the United States. So that is, that's a little tough, everybody. So let's get to some of these headlines. Ambulances, speaking of which, carrying injured Gazans crossed into Egypt. 45 injured Palestinians left Gaza yesterday, according to this Washington Post report. According to Egypt, it was the first time civilians could escape the besieged territory since the Israel-Gaza war began on October 7th. Donald Trump Jr. testified in a civil fraud trial in New York City yesterday. The former president's son said he wasn't responsible for preparing the Trump Organization's financial statements. His testimony is expected to continue today. It's a $250 million lawsuit, which accuses his father, the former president, Donald Trump, and family and executives of inflating his real estate values to let's gain advantage on business deals. But remember, that's why it's called real estate speculation. I'm just saying. Representative George Santos survived an effort to expel him from the House. Can you believe it? Wow. 24 Republicans and 155 Democrats voted to remove the New York Republican yesterday, short of the two-thirds majority required for his expulsion. And by the way, the new Speaker of the House voted to keep him in too. He's running for re-election. He faces 23 federal charges. I wonder if he will win. What do you think, everybody? What do you think? In the meantime, the quiet part was said out loud. You have an Israeli public diplomacy minister who posted on Facebook. How many of you have been in Facebook jail? That Israeli officials must invest all of their energy into erasing, as she put it, all of Gaza from the face of the earth. The Iranian foreign minister threatened the U.S., and in fact, his defense minister said that the U.S. will suffer a blow if the fighting continues. They warned Europe of the same, everybody. Wow, there's a lot going on. As I said, congratulations are in order for the Texas Rangers. They won the World Series. 4-1. They shut out the Diamondbacks last night, 5-0. In the NFL tonight, the Titans will be playing the Steelers, and in the NBA, the Mavericks won 14, the Bulls 105, and the Timberwolves are triumphant, however, over the Nuggets 110-89. Pastor Darius Brooks, as you get into the good news, how can we worship with you on Sunday, and how can we get this food that you've been giving out hundreds of bags every week? Pastor Brooks.
Santita, I'm excited. Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois, right off of 290 and Manheim. Every Tuesday from 5 till 7 and every Wednesday from noon till 2. We are serving the community. Please, and every week, come hell or high water. That's what I love about us and what we do and doing the work of the ministry and the work of God. It's to have compassion and to help people. We do it every Tuesday from 5 till 7. And Wednesdays for seniors who we don't like to be out in the evening from noon till 2. That's every week, every Tuesday. Grace Central Church, 10216 South Kitchener Street, Westchester, Illinois. GraceCentral.net, GraceCentral.net. You can also go to DariusBrooks.com and it will take you there. Santita, I'm often asked as I travel with all kinds of people in my life, how do you do this? How do you keep smiling? How do you make sense out of life? Everywhere I go, Santita, everywhere I go, people see Darius Brooks the way Darius Brooks is. And one guy had the position to ask me, he said, I'm just trying to figure you out. I said, there's nothing to figure out. What I honestly believe is what I honestly believe. And whatever you honestly believe should be what you honestly believe. But Santita, I tell people, whatever you believe, make sure it works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, then you should see where the belief really matters in one life, which is where I'm going today. Galatians 5:7. You were running well. Who handed you from obeying the truth? You were running well. Who handed you from obeying the truth? Santita, I had to use so I thought just for these 2 minutes. Don't walk out in doubt. Don't walk out in doubt. Santita, we as believers, we committed to God because we believe that this is the way we're supposed to do things. Everybody has a right to believe what they believe. But I understand that He has a plan, and it's not ours in the natural, but more of a spiritual perspective. A natural perspective deals with your feelings and emotions. A spiritual perspective only deals with one's heart. Your heart is how you live every day. If you're in a bad relationship, your heart says, hey, what are you doing? Your feelings and emotions may stay close to that situation, which is why the word is in our heart. It's that one can believe that can make them free. I'm going to close, Santita. You are in judgment of every word you utter about you or about the God you say you serve. God's word wonderfully is designed to simply convict one to live their life differently. I can live my life the way I want to, or if I become a believer, I can live my life the way he says this is to do. Some people live their whole life, Santita, through without resolution. But it really doesn't matter what's going on. Take your eye off of the condition. And as a believer, we put it back on God. And that's where our peace takes place for the answer to our everyday life. And if by chance we meet with other believers, it's beautiful. If not, we're designed to show people that we're the darkness into a marvelous light.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Pastor Darius Brooks. How can we be with you on Sundays? How can we be with you on Sundays? And even if we want to volunteer at the church to help you get out this food.
We definitely need volunteers on Tuesdays. Our Sunday service is 10:30 till noon. We're very well balanced in spirit and in truth. That's every Sunday, 10:30 till noon. As a matter of fact, this is my anniversary this Sunday coming up. Karen Yarbrough will be our special guest, and she's just see what we're doing with feeding the hungry and things, and so she's going to be our special guest Sundays at 10:30 till noon every Sunday from 10:30 till noon. We're out at noon, and that's the time you could come worship with us. And we definitely need volunteers on Tuesdays. It is an amazing experience, and everyone that comes, they say, "Wow, this feels good," especially with newbies when they come and volunteer serving. If you really in it for real, Santita, it's the most rewarding thing you can ever do on the planet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love you, Pastor Darius Brooks. Yes, that Darius Brooks of the Tommies, but he's a pastor now of Grace Central in Westchester, Illinois. Get on over there on Sunday. You will be blessed. I love you, Pastor Brooks. We've got Dr. Shanina Knighton with us today, infection preventionist, registered nurse. Dr. Knighton, what's on your mind today?
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
I am doing well. It's always a joy to hear your voice.
That's awesome. So I just want to talk about community living right now. I know that right now there is, and I ain't gonna lie, I'm gonna call it the alphabet soup, but I'm doing that on purpose, okay, and rhetorically as we talk about COVID. Meaning we know we had the BA2 variant, and long story short, that was mild. And then there is this J variant, which is a derivative of this BA7, okay? And I always said a while ago that the variants would keep mutating and that COVID would be with us for some time now. And so, sorry, I'm so distracted. That printer is so loud.
I am so sorry. I wish I could turn it down.
I know. I'm just going to try to think over it. But the, long story short, with the variant mutating and me saying that COVID would be with us for some time now, I compared it to the Hong Kong flu, which is what it was called. So, and the Hong Kong flu, which was around in the 50s, 60s, it just became extinct in 2017, where they were no longer able to track the many mutations. And so that's just giving somebody a depiction of how long it takes for something to be able to go away. With that being said, I'm focusing on community living right now in the era of illness, whether that's COVID-19, whether that's flu, or any other illness. And that's just a reminder that there are individuals that live in apartment buildings that are not upkept, that their heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems are not maintenance, meaning that their heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems is a shared system, meaning that the ductwork that goes throughout your apartment is also connected to the ductwork that goes through other people's apartments, which means that, yes, it is possible that with dust, with unkept HVAC, things can travel. And the reason why that is important is because when you're talking about illnesses, when you're talking about dust, when you're talking about so many other things, living in a community setting, whether that's being in small closed-in hallways where they're crowded, being inside of your apartment and everyone is running air, running heat, but it's the same air, you ask, okay, well, what is there for me to be able to do? I know some people might say, hey, go and get an air purifier. An air purifier will work, but only to a certain extent. I actually encourage people to make sure that if they can, crack a window. Crack a window even if you have company, because getting that outside air then decreases the concentration of germs that could potentially be in the air. Somebody might ask, well, how is that measured? And I'm not telling you how it's measured for everyone to go get a CO2 device. But when we breathe, air is, let's say, detected in the air, we can use a CO2 reader. And if the concentration of CO2 is beyond 100, we know that there is an increased risk of germ transmission, because that means that the air is so thick that there's not enough of air exchange. I, again, am talking about community living because these are commonly shared stairwells. They're commonly shared elevator buttons, keypads, doorknobs, packages, mailboxes, washers and dryers. All of these things seem to be contaminated with germs. And so it's very important that you're making sure you're cleaning your hands before and after. It's very important making sure that the air just within itself, you are actually inquiring and being an advocate to understand that the HVAC system, which is the heating, ventilation, air conditioning system, has some sort of plan that is attached to it that's going to keep you safe, keeping others safe. And it's also, too, just remembering that if you are utilizing elevators, and as we are talking about the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, even if you don't like wearing masks, if you know that the elevator has the potential of being crowded, wear a mask. Because again, if the air is not moving and you have to go to, let's say, the 10th, 15th floor and people are getting on and getting off, that air is exchanging as it's opening up. But you also want to make sure that if it's not opening up, you're not running the risk of being sick by that one person that's got a cough that they just can't hold. So those are my tidbits for today. Just wanted to talk about HVAC and talk about the safety around common items.
That is big. Because, you're always trying to figure out, how safe am I? Because in a building, and I live in a building, we're all breathing the same air, right? And we're connected by the same ventilation system. So even when I have an air purifier, hello, go to Hey Dr. Nina, HEYDRNINA, so you can get some great information. It's practical. It's the best. She's the best, Dr. Shanina Knighton. Dr. Max Wolf coming up on the Santita Jackson Show, talking about these pharmaceutical walkouts in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Honey, I'm sorry. I have to find these I find these stories just as I am coming back onto air. I'm always looking. But how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Oh, honey, I was with my parents late last night.
Oh,
boy.
Did you have a good time?
Girl, they are a hoot. They've been together 62 years. And they are a hoot. And oh my gosh. My poor mom, she is doing more cooking than she has done in 50 years. I'm like, whoo. I said, man. And my father wants this. Where you going? What you doing? I'm like, hey, you've been gone all of our lives. Now you. Whoo. I said, boy, but this marriage, and partnership. They've been together since college.
I love it.
They've been together since college. Really,
I
since
do.
my father
Look,
said since the day they met. And I was like, oh, you all been married 61 years? He said, we've been together 62. I said, okay.
and look, and look,
We have Dr. Max Wolf on the line.
since my husband say the same thing, and he dare you to question him, okay?
No, oh my gosh. Ugh. But it's a lot. It's a lot. But I mean, they're, they we've been really, really blessed because I still have them, I mean, I laugh and I joke, but I'm grateful to God that I still have my parents. Grateful.
It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
I mean, and they're together, so it's like, well, here we go. Even when they make me roll my eyes, I'm like, they're mine and they're here, so I just got to deal with it. I was on my way home and my mother said, I need to run to the store. I'm like, can we call Instacart? No. I said, okay. So that was not running to the store was 2 hours. I said, oh, Mom. And I knew it was going to be. Then the 2 hours turned into 3. And she said, you know what? I need to run over here. See you shortly. Girl, by the time I got home, it was close to 9. I was wiped out. Dr. Wolf, how you doing?
Good morning.
Thank you for working with me this morning. I've got a gentleman whose family, 39 members of his family have been killed in Gaza, and he's been joined by a young woman, Noah Grayevsky. I believe her family, I think a member of her family is held hostage. They're part of Portland Palestinians and Jews. It's a project that they have in Portland, Oregon, and it's very early for them. So they said, would you mind if we did 5:30?
2 minutes.
Time? I said, let me call Dr. Wolf. I'll see. So thank you for switching times because they couldn't bear 4:30. And you've got Dr. Shanita Knighton. Dr. Wolf, I really want you to know her. She's an infection preventionist. And we've got to get the word out about. You know what? I'm not paying any attention to him. You guys, don't pay any attention.
It's a birthmark. It's a birthmark.
Oh, I love my Max. He is so nuts. And I knew there were like several years. I knew him like a couple of years before I even knew that he had this great sense of humor. And one of your friends, when we were at the Left Forum, when you had Dad there,
right,
he said, "Don't you know Max he's a comedian?" I said, "Seriously?" He said, "He's always so gentlemanly. He's never says anything that's out and crazy." He said, "Max?" I said, "Yeah, never." He said, "Oh wow, you don't know him." I said, "Yeah, oh my gosh."
Could be a lot of things, but people don't always want their financial advice to come from someone who's humorous, I guess. It could be a career thing too.
Look, let me tell you something. It all worked for me because I love pieces.
Back in 30.
But I bet that Dr. Knight has experienced some of this stuff too. Sometimes people have a hard time balancing someone who's lighthearted or has a little bit of gallows humor, even though it's usually required in certain professions. They have a hard time balancing that with the expertise.
Dr. Knighton just frightens you.
Perhaps she hasn't.
No, she just frightens you because she tells you all
these things. Her subject probably does.
Her subject frightens you every single day. Oh my gosh, every single day.
I'd rather have it. It's much better to have a scary conversation than sepsis, so it's a good deal in the end.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk. We've been talking about the Middle East, but, on Sunday, we're going to be with Congressman Jackson at the South Shore Cultural Center talking about the migrant crisis that's, that's it's really hit the big cities that are run by Democratic mayors. We're going to be talking about that. And that's from 1 to 4 at the South Shore Cultural Center. Go to his website, Congressman Jonathan Jackson's website. And from 1 to 2, we're going to have lunch. You'll be served. You know, we'll carry out lunches. It's going to be nice. And then from 2 to 4, we will have this town hall meeting. And hey, everybody, we want to fix. We want to hear what your thoughts are. We want to hear what your thoughts are. We want to hear what your thoughts are, and we want you to give full vent to them. But let's keep the atmosphere respectful, so that we can fix the problem and not the blame. All right, we've got Dr. Max Wolf real early this morning. You know, there was something as we've been dealing with what's been happening internationally. We've been missing something very, very close to home, and I don't know about you, but I go to the pharmacy on a regular basis, and pharmacists at Walgreens and CVS have been staging walkouts. Why, Dr. Wolf?
Yeah, so I think it's a big deal partly because those two firms, particularly CVS and Walgreens, have done a pretty good job at taking an enormous amount of the national pharmacy business. So the sort of age of the mom and pop independent pharmacy, while not maybe over, is much diminished from what it once was. So an awful lot of us go and get our pharmacy needs met, which are extensive, since a lot of Americans are taking a lot of stuff, right? So it's more rare to find someone, particularly once they're a bit older, who's not taking anything, than to find people taking many things. And a lot of them are going to the Rite Aids and the CVS and the Walgreens because of their positions. And it appears that for many years now, CVS and Walgreens, but not just those, but particularly those two big chains, they've really been tightening the sort of knot for folks who work there. Fewer support staff, longer hours, and then shorter hours with prescription goals. And you're starting to get these stories of people who are asked to write as many scripts as they used to write while getting paid for 12 hours in their new 9-hour shift. And you have stories of people filling 1,000 prescriptions in a shift. And obviously that's probably not sustainable for a lot of people. And you get the stories of people who are sobbing at their desk and have to go back in the back and lie down because they're so tired. And then the other side of that is errors. Because if you ask someone to fill that many scripts in such a short period of time with limited support day in and day out, it's obviously going to take a heavy toll on them, right? And it's going to take a toll on the public because there'll be mistakes. I know human beings make mistakes, but if you put them into an impossible circumstance, then you're going to make a larger number of mistakes, right? I mean, they don't talk about it. I get that. If I were in their union, I wouldn't either. But you also have to begin to wonder what happens if you put people at the breaking point under enormous strain in a room full of pharmaceutical drugs. One can imagine various paths from there, not all of which are awesome and pleasant. And so that you can have someone who may be impaired, who is exhausted, making life or death decisions for hundreds of people a day. And all that's just to nudge the profit margin up. And I don't think we needed a 9,999, but if we did, this is another reason to put some real regulation around this, or decide that once again, the unfettered profit motive is a mediocre assurance system in the medical industry. In a country that substitutes quite frequently pharmaceuticals for therapies, medical devices, prevention, exercise, nutrition, can't afford to have a mistake there because you're asking your pharmacist to do your diet, your exercise, your consulting physician, right? And your lifestyle advisor. And it's hard to do that filling 1,000 prescriptions a shift.
And, one doesn't really think about those consequences, that, shift overlap. And I have heard I've heard people talking at different pharmacies, and then they shut, and then I guess sometimes they're so overwhelmed, these 24-hour pharmacies, you'll go there. I was leaving town like really, really early one day, and I said, I'll just wait, because, it's a 24-hour pharmacy, and it was closed, and it happened several times, like over a 2-month period. They were short-staffed. And then when you got there during the day, the lines were like 15, 20, 30 people deep at any given time that I went. I was like, whoa, what's going on? I mean, and This is one particular pharmacy I go to, and these people are great. They're efficient. They know what I need, yada yada yada. But I just got, but but I'm seeing like I will say this in Walgreens and CVS, it's like they're moving to this computer model, Dr. Wolf, and there are not enough people working in the stores. People working in the stores. CVS, you can
For
barely
sure.
find anyone to check you out. You have to go. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. And I keep asking these young people, I said, would you come out and help me do this? They're like, well, all you have to do is, I'm like, honey, I'm trying to help you keep your job. Nobody's there.
Yeah, no, they've also seemed to have added quite a number of fairly labor-intensive services. So it does vary a little bit. I know your listening audience is vast. And so the policies and circumstances probably do vary a bit from one location or one store to another. So not to paint with too broad a brush, but they've also added a lot of labor-intensive services. So until fairly recently, until the pandemic, in most locations, CVS wasn't so aggressive or so large in vaccination business and the flu shot business, right? And they're starting to have trouble with that too, where they can't sort of meet the scheduling or control the scheduling because they're just being asked to do that on top of all their heavy pre-existing burdens without any relief. So you're starting to get, it reminds me of a lot of industries where you're getting to the sort of breaking point, right? And you're getting to a breaking point because you've pushed these people so hard to increase the profitability of the owners that it really doesn't work for them as a human in there, right? And to some extent, when you talk about the computer model, I think what you might be getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you're setting everything to the pace of machines to maximize your profit, the humans will struggle.
Yeah.
This is a 150-year-old problem. This caused great riots and fighting when it was done on the assembly lines in agriculture, and it was done on the assembly lines in industry. And it may be kind of the moment now where this is done in the service industry.
Well, it's giving me no space in the pharmacy. And you should ask questions at the pharmacy, Dr. Wolf. I don't have time. I mean, and they can't help it because they've got to meet their numbers.
Sure.
I don't, when I need
and the
to
number
ask,
of people who carefully read.
That's what I'm saying. Just to ask a question like, well, wait a minute, I want to, because I just left the doctor's office or I left the hospital, and because that's happening in the hospitals now. My father just got out of the hospital a couple of weeks ago, and they give you these discharge papers, and it's a great hospital, but they give you these discharge papers and they just send you home, and they'll go over, in a perfunctory way. Well, you need to take this, that, and that. Okay. And when you get out the door, your nerves are shot because you're like, whoa, this person's health is in my hands. I'm trying to read this. So your default, it's the pharmacy. They're trying to figure it out, but then they've got 10, 15, 20 people behind you.
Yeah.
That's good.
And by the way, the pharmacy is important to tell people about drug reactions, which is a big issue in the country, cause a lot of illness, and also interactions increasingly with the supplements. Because people take all kinds of supplements in sort of an unregulated space with a little willy-nilly. And some of the supplements can have major implications for your body's rate and ability to absorb the compounds in your pharmaceuticals.
So where are we with this before you go?
I mean, I think we're at a point where we're watching one industry after another express the same set of frustrations, and we discuss them each as isolated incidents. So we talk about the actors and the writers. We talk about the folks at Kaiser Permanente. We talk about Stellantis and GM and Ford. We talk about Toyota. We talk about CVS. We talk about, Walgreens. But at some point, it does seem like we're talking about the same issues, which is if there isn't space or humanity for people at work, it's going to turn the whole equation impossible. And, we also see people freaking out over their workplace-related instances in one way or another, and often that hurts the general public, and hurts them, and hurts each other, and driving people to the point of just duress for an increase in profitability is starting to look sometimes like a little bit of a social problem.
It's a social problem, but it's a healthcare problem. I mean, before we bring on Chip Gibbons from Defending Rights in Dissent, I know you've got to go, Dr. Wolf, but Dr. Knighton is a registered nurse and a PhD college lecturer. And and an infection preventionist. That is her specific area of concentration. In less than a minute, Dr. Knighton, what do you think when you hear this? I just heard you chiming in because she wanted to hear what you had to say, Dr. Wolf.
Well, I think you're spot on, just Santita, just in regards to the rush process when someone is going home, feeling overwhelmed, discharged, don't understand the contraindications of medications, and just as you both alluded to, how they would react with one another. And so I also just want to speak to the fact of, yes, while there is this note of machines, thinking that they're able to do people's jobs, there are other issues that ensue, meaning that when we're talking about people that may have had, let's say, other drugs already in their home, like other pharmaceuticals, but then they have an admission, and then now they still have those old medications at home, don't know what to do with those, but then they have, let's say, a new prescription. You are right. They lead to overdoses. They lead to adverse effects because you end up with someone that may not necessarily know if they're supposed to be continuing those medications along with the new, or if they are supposed to discard them. And so that's very challenging if someone is a caregiver or that person themselves to go from having care around the clock from healthcare professionals to then being sent home without their structure, their infrastructure being evaluated, when we know that they may have loved ones that may have to work or have other responsibilities that cannot care for them around the clock. And so that is a part of the system that is failing, but I think it kind of primes us to get Dr. Wolf's opinion next time on what his thoughts are about hospital at home, which is an upcoming model as well, where the same acute care services that people receive inside of hospitals, they also are starting to now receive at home.
Well, Dr. Wolf, before you go, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think there's lots of better care models if we're interested in doing two very important things, which are both reasonable and they don't usually get discussed by the same crowd, but they should, which is manage our out of control and ballooning healthcare spend and also our healthcare outcomes. Because as we sit this morning and talk, we have about the 35th best outcomes and we're way out front in the spend. So all these sort of corner cutting that we're doing in our quality of healthcare isn't making it cheaper, which is kind of wild. And that is because we've gotten sicker as we've decided to cut corners and spend more. And I think there's no kind of version of this where we don't talk about two things which I think became raw in the pandemic, and I'll leave it there. And that is, does anyone care for anyone much anymore? It's a big problem, right? And also, is there any sort of solution here? Can you fall back on the infrastructure? Can you fall back on the institutions here? And I think a lot of people come one way or another to understand that if they fall back on these institutions, they fall out of the net.
Of course, it is always great to hear Dr. Maxwell helping us to think about the things that we need to be looking at a little closer to home, everybody, because this is how we live. This is where we live. And so before you get upset with the people in the pharmacy, understand that they too are under the gun, just like everybody else. You've seen the UAW, it's been Striketober. Everybody's out saying that they want fewer people to do more work. And we're all suffering as a result. It's a simplification, but that's kind of sort of where we are. So let's think about that. Dr. Max Wolf, sending you much love. Of course, give my love to my god baby Thea as you get her off to school today.
Absolutely.
That's my sweetie. That's my sweetie.
Will do.
His baby, she and I were born on the same day, Doctor. Dr.
Crazy.
Wait a minute, same day, same time. Same day.
She's also
you got to be a good
she's
baby.
also a highly opinionated person who rarely stops talking. Who's not afraid to be
thank
hyper,
you. Hang up now. Hang up on him now. He's talking about me. I get it.
She's a Cancer.
The personality similarity.
Yes, that zodiac sign.
I'm gonna beat you up when I see you.
She has her own talk show too, but it's uncompensated. It doesn't have engineers or presently much of an audience.
I'm gonna get him when I see him, girl. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna get him. I knew that was coming. A sneak attack. I'm gonna tell Congressman Jackson. I'm gonna tell my brother Jonathan. He's just going to agree with you or whatever. I love you, Dr. Wilford. And
Thanks, guys. Be well.
may you be well. And I'm sending you
Take
so
care.
much love. Dr. Knighton, stay right here. I've got Chip Gibbons, Policy Director for Defending Rights and Dissent. He's absolutely brilliant. He's been so busy that I've been working very hard to get him. Every time I'd get a text from him, he's like, "Ah, Santita, I'm so sorry. I can't be with you right now." But he is so busy defending rights and dissent. And we saw something really unusual, Chip Gibbons. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's in, the dignified, meeting. I mean, he's sitting for one of the Senate committees, and he's in the hearing. And okay, I said, "Where's Medea?" Boom, she pops up. Medea Benjamin. Boom. So wait a minute, we're Jewish Voices for Peace. Pop, 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 pop. I think, and then I saw some black protesters. But I mean, and he looked like he was really taken off point. I don't think he maybe one protester, but as many, I don't think that he expected that. What's going on? I mean, because we're seeing a debate in this space, because you've never been able to really have the debate or the discussion about Israel and Palestine in the United States. You haven't. You get shut down. I mean, you see what's happened to the kids at Harvard. You see what happened to the head of the New York NYU Law School Students Association. She's under investigation, and she has been told by some of the biggest firms in the country, "You're not going to be able to work." Some of the biggest moguls in the United States have said, "We know who the students are who signed on for this, and you're not going to be able to work." Come on. I've put a lot on your plate, but you go for it.
Well, I do think the number of protesters was really interesting. And people haven't seen the pictures. It's fascinating. It's like the whole audience behind them has blood red hands, and they're holding them up. And, as you noted, Medea Benjamin has paid visits to Mr. Blinken before. And, these hearings, people usually get up and say things. But it's been really surprising. I mean, I live in D.C., and my boss works as a legal observer for the National Lawyers Guild a lot, sort of going down to protest and making sure the police behave the way they're supposed to. And it's been really hard just to keep track of the number of protests in D.C. I feel like there's been one every single day since this war has begun. So we are seeing an outpouring of people who do not agree with their government's policies. They are tired of the blank check for, Israel can do whatever they want. And maybe we'll ask them, well, how many civilian casualties will we tolerate? And they tell them, oh, there's no limit. There's no limit. And you really see people taking to the streets, people protesting nonviolently, people protesting peacefully. I was around the day there was the Jewish Voice for Peace protest at the Capitol Hill. And I was really surprised at how big and how spirited it was. I mean, I've been to a lot of protests in my life, and it was very inspiring and very heartening. On the other hand, as you mentioned, and you know very well, we're not really allowed to have a discussion about Israel-Palestine in this country. It has always been really McCarthyite on this issue. I mean, both supporters of Israel and supporters of Palestinian human rights, they both have First Amendment rights, but for decades we've seen the systematic attacks on those who criticize anything about U.S.-Israel policy or say anything in support of Palestinian rights. They tell you you're a terrorist, you're this, you're that, and it isn't just labeling people as terrorist supporters. It isn't just demonization. There's real cost. People have been losing their jobs for decades. The FBI has been deeply involved in spying on and harassing pro-Palestinian groups. I mean, even in the late 70s, when after Watergate, after the revelation of spying on Martin Luther King, the FBI had the most restrictions on it at any point in its history. They're still finding ways to go after pro-Palestinian protesters. I mean, part of the reason why I'm usually so busy is I'm working on this book, this history of FBI surveillance. And so much of it is about surveillance of pro-Palestinian protesters. I mean, Ian and I work mostly from the original documents that have been declassified. There's stuff in them from the 80s and the 70s where they go to protest and try to take people's pictures and identify who the leaders are, and just devoting massive amounts of resources to spying on college students. Then you look at what's happening right now, and you have members of Congress calling for investigations into the student group, Students for Justice for Palestine, calling for their funding to be investigated, calling for their ties to terror, quote-unquote terrorism to be investigated. And now you have the Anti-Defamation League and the Lewis Brandeis Center, two groups that have been deeply involved in sort of inciting McCarthyism against supporters of Palestinian human rights. The Brandeis Center has been particularly notorious for their promotion of these laws that at the state level that target that I've worked on for almost 10 years now, that target people for their support for boycotts, divestments, and sanctions for Palestinian rights. And they have both sent a letter to all of these university professors telling them to investigate their pro-Palestinian student groups for violations of the U.S. Material Support for Terrorism statute. And those are very serious laws. The one carries 15 years in prison. The other carries 20 years in prison. And, we, like every other First Amendment group, have always been very critical of those statutes. But as broad as they are, there's nothing that covered. Oh, we're going to commercial break.
No. But you got you've got about 30 seconds. I wanted you to finish what you were saying.
Yeah. The point is that they're not offering up any evidence that anyone is supporting anything illegal or breaking any laws. All they're doing is sort of treating people's speech for Palestine as akin to terrorism, and then trying to browbeat and intimidate them. And I think the really important thing people can remember is they have a First Amendment right to go to protest, to speak out, and that they should not be intimidated by these groups.
But that's just not been my experience. Actually, when you went through those FBI documents, you got files on Reverend. I mean, and my mom.
Oh, yes, I've seen, yeah.
Lots and lots. Oh, yeah. I mean, just because you wanted people to be treated fairly. He's always said, hey, Israeli security is locked into Palestinian justice. You're not going to have one without the other. And boy, you remember, of course, Congressman Finley in his book, They Dare to Speak Out. But something has shifted. Something has shifted in the zeitgeist. Something has shifted out here in the air somewhere, because people feel the tongues have been loosened. But now, accompanying that, are threats to Muslims, Jews. It's just a really interesting time. Chip Gibbons, Policy Director, Defending Rights and Dissent, right here on the Santita Jackson Show. See you at the Migrant Town Hall meeting Congressman Jackson is having on Sunday from 1 to 4 at the South Shore Cultural Center. Back in just a minute. Oh, I am so glad to finally have you. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. It's just been the last 3 weeks have been just really busy.
Don't apologize. I
was in the middle of working on my book on the chapter on sort of FBI surveillance of Palestinian activists in the 90s when the war began, and I haven't had a chance to even look at the book since till last night. I mean, because we have a bunch of stuff happening right now. We have the wave of McCarthyism. Gasola. I agreed to go for his newsletter for 2 months, like a weekly deadline like that, and it's just like these things at once. There's a lot at us right now. Yeah,
but because I want to talk about Julian Assange again also. Please let me know. I don't want to let that go.
No, we're not letting that go. We're just.
I'm saying I don't want to let it go. I want you to know. I want you to talk about it.
I know. I won't let you let it go. Don't worry. One thing, I have not let anyone forget about that, but it's just been like, we have a thing on the Hill we've been working on for that for a long period that's coming to the end. And then in the middle of that, you have all these people calling for the FBI to investigate students, for people disbanding student groups, just real crisis moment for American democracy.
Well,
Although I guess one is not a crisis moment for American democracy.
we've been doing this. I mean, this is how this is. Pardon me, but this is how we get down in the United States.
No, I know.
This is what we do now. So I mean, and I think we've got to be careful, because the whole term democracy has been so abused. Because it's like, wait a minute, y'all act like this is what we've had ever since, and we have not. We've not had that. So, I just think it's a very interesting time, and to be sitting with my parents who've been at the center of this particular storm for so long. It's been interesting, watching all of that. It really
Do they yeah.
Oh no, what were you?
Do they feel heartened at all, or I know, because I haven't been involved this as long as they are. I started getting involved with Palestinian stuff back in like 2006, 2007, and it is interesting watching this sort of new crop of activists who have much higher expectations for our elected officials on this issue than I think anyone's ever had before. Like, people are legitimately angry. Democrats, progressive Democrats, young people, the Sanders voters are like legitimately angry at what Biden and Fetterman, people that they voted for, are doing. And
yeah,
I think that's a new one. And then you get these sort of like media comment. Well, what did you expect them to do? This is what they always were going to do, and it's like, yeah, I kind of agree with that, but I'm also sort of intrigued that there's a segment of the voting population now that, just limitless violence against Palestinian civilians is not okay with them.
Something has
It's
happened.
an interesting development.
Something has broken loose, and things will never be the same again. I remember the day that Reverend announced that he was running for president. He said, as of this day, nothing will ever be the same. And he was right. You got Geraldine Ferraro on the ticket, really, because of his activism. He forced the Democrats to put a woman on the ticket because he said he would do that. Mondale and all of the other people who were running would not commit to it. But because he had done so well, there was a movement afoot to put him on the ticket. So in order to undercut him, they put her on the ticket. And there it goes. But, not that I was, God bless you, not that I was looking for him to be on the ticket, because the process kind of turned me off, to be honest with you. Not the process, the folk. The folks turned me
Yeah, I know. I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine what it's like getting on the ticket for one of the
2 minutes.
parties.
Well, I think he had taken such a beating about, because really the right-wing Jewish community came after him. And Rabbi Meir Kahana, he wanted to march on our home, and it was almost a fight between him, his group, Jews Against Jesse. They were going to fly from New York to Chicago to boycott our house. And the Fruit of Islam said, I don't think you're going to even get on the plane to New York. And so that's the kind of this we dealt with. They interrupted Reverend's speech twice. We didn't know if they had guns or not. They had a Ruin Jesse Ruin campaign that ran in alignment with the Run Jesse Run campaign. And it was all because, from 79, when he, there's this famous picture of him hugging Arafat. You hug people when you greet them. But you know what? All of that is just part of the process.
Back in a minute.
It was ugly. They paid the price. And then, I've shared this countless times. My Harvard interview was a mashup This Mr. Cohen said he didn't like my father or his politics. I mean, it took them 45 minutes to kind of get through it was really racist because they couldn't figure out that, your father went to the University of Chicago. That's a great school. Your brother's at St. Albans. That's a great school. I see where you live. That's a really great neighborhood. Da, 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 da. It was just something like, yeah, your mother doesn't work outside the home. Finally, they asked, well, what does your father do? You spend a lot of time out the country. I don't understand your life because Black folks, I guess, we're not supposed to live this way. And when the pre-interviewer found out who my father was, he said, oh, wow. And my mother wanted to go on the interview with me because we had been harassed so. She knew that the interview was not going to be a good one. But then our friend, Dr. Alvin Toussaint, was the most prominent Black psychiatrist in the country. And he
Stand
was
by.
a professor, of course, at Harvard, and they would pull his tenure.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to the love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, talking about how dissent is under fire in the United States as we deal with this widening conflict. The Iranian foreign minister and his other ministers are saying, America, if Israel continues with this bombardment, if you will, of Gaza, you're going to feel it in the United States. Ouch. And so Chip Gibbons has pulled together this tremendous piece in defending rights and dissent. I love, love, love all the work that you do. Israel-Gaza war has dissent under fire at home. Of course, Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of State, was taken by surprise when he was, not just because he was interrupted at his Senate hearing this past week, but he was interrupted several times by groups of people. It was quite stunning, quite frankly. And I think it threw him off of his rhythm. So I want to talk with you about that here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. And let me just take a moment to thank Fred Eichner and Katie Dans and Matt Cummings and Mark Pinsky and Melissa Rizzi and Antonio and Steve and the whole team at WCPT, Vidalia and Patty Vasquez and June Esposito, for having the courage to allow this kind of talk to come through on my show. They certainly don't have to allow me to have this platform, and I'm so grateful to them for the support that they've given me. And the support you see that they've given me is the fact that I'm still on the air. And I want to thank them for allowing conversations that most people don't allow in media. And remember, this is the largest progressive talk radio station in the country, and we need your support. I want you to please support Patty Vasquez from 5 to 7, Joan Esposito from 2 to 5. These people speak for you. They fight for you. They do. So please give them your support. All right, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson. Congratulations to the Texas Rangers. They've had a bit of a drought, but now they're the World Series champions. They shut out the Diamondbacks last night from 5-0. All right. God bless you, everybody. But now we've got the NBA and hockey coming. And it's just great. I love this time of year. Let's get to some of these headlines. Ambulances carrying injured Gazans crossed into Egypt, everybody. 45 injured Palestinians left Gaza yesterday. Egypt said it was the first time civilians could escape the besieged territory since the Israel-Gaza war began on October 7th. Donald Trump Jr. testified at a civil fraud trial in New York yesterday. The former president's son said he wasn't responsible for preparing the Trump Organization's financial statements. His testimony is expected to continue today. Representative George Santos, surprise, surprise, is still in office. He survived an effort to expel him from the House yesterday. You need 2/3 of the House. They could not get the numbers. 24 Republicans and 155 Democrats, however, voted to remove the New York Republican yesterday. but it was short of the two-thirds majority, so he is still there. He's running for re-election, everybody, although he faces 23 federal charges, including fraud, money laundering, falsifying records, including who he is. His trial is set for September, everybody. And talk about the quiet part being said out loud. An Israeli MP, indeed, the public diplomacy uh, minister, posted on Facebook, and she wasn't even put in Facebook jail, everybody. She said that Israeli officials must invest all of their energy, she said this, into erasing all of Gaza from the face of the earth. Wow. In the meantime, the Iranian foreign minister and his defense minister have warned America and Europe that if these bombings continue, that we will feel this pain on European and United States soil. As we speak to Chip Gibbons, let me get just a few of these. I just want to share with you this opportunity that you can have to get a home. Generally, you need what? 20% down? No, there is a program that Team Hochberg has where you only need 1% down. Can you believe it? Oh, yeah. Looking to purchase a new home, everybody, with only 1% down, it can happen, everybody, but you got to qualify for it, which means you need to call them at 855-56 David, 855-56 David. Call Team Hochberg and find out from your trusted local lender about this program. It's fantastic. Up until now, saving for a down payment has been the primary impediment, including poor credit. And they have a credit card that can help you to fix that too, everybody. It's been the largest challenge that borrowers have faced trying to buy a home. Well, Team Hochberg now has a loan to help listeners who qualify overcome this challenge with their new 1% down payment loan. 1% down and you can own a home, everybody. Team Hochberg wants to help you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, your kids, everybody who qualify. You have to qualify. So go to 56david.com or call them at 855-56David. Just call them. Call them and find out about this program. It really is exciting. 1% down. And you can own your own home. Call Team Hochberg today. Chip Gibbons, Policy Director, Defending Rights and Dissent. You see, Craig McKeever called out the wholesale slaughter of the Palestinian people rooted in ethno-nationalist, settler, colonial ideology. He's a human rights attorney. He left his UN post with this resignation letter. The the nation has said, memo to Biden administration policy dissenters, don't mourn, resign. And you're talking about the assault upon dissent at home. And yet it seems that people, for the first, I don't know if we've ever lived through something like this, where you've had this much dissent, particularly when it came to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. Chip Gibbons.
Yeah, I think it's been growing for some time. I think every time Israel does one of these massacres in Gaza, I think people have been starting in 2000, not starting in 2009, but 2009 was the first one that I vividly remember. I had been involved in anti-Iraq war protesting. I was in college, and that was a really horrific. I mean, it's not as horrific. That was a really horrific bombing of Gaza, and it sort of mobilized a lot of people to change their opinions in a way that this hadn't happened before. And then in 2014, they did an even bigger bombing campaign, and we saw even more people on the streets. And now you have a bombing campaign that a lot of people, international law experts, scholars are increasingly describing as bordering or crossing the line into genocide. And I don't have a take on whether or not that assessment is accurate or not. But when you have leading genocide scholars, when you have leading experts on international human rights law saying that, people who don't just throw that term around, I think we all need to take pause and think about what it is that our government has made us complicit in. And you are seeing a real wave of dissent. And I do think things have shifted in this country on this issue in a way that the people in Washington, the people who are on the Beltway Media, and I'm also thankful you have this platform. I was listening to you say that, and I was thinking how thankful I am to them too, because there's not a lot of programs like yours where people speak freely, where people can talk about issues that matter. It's oftentimes the opposite. So we're very grateful at Defending Rights in Dissent that you have this show. But you are seeing this sort of changing groundswell, and when you have a government that is historically resorted to political repression to silence people for speaking out on Palestine, when you have a government that is so committed to a war that is clearly resulting in mass civilian suffering, mass civilian casualties, and you have a growing segment of the population who is saying, wait a moment, don't do this in my name, don't do this on my behalf, we don't want this war, you're unfortunately going to see an escalation of some of the old habits of McCarthyism. And there's no other real word. I know McCarthyism is one of those words that people always use, and it feels kind of tired and overused. But there's no other word to describe what's going on. I mean, you have these trucks riding around Harvard and Columbia that list the names of students on them. They list the name. Have you seen this story?
Yes,
they
I have, but would you describe it for the audience?
Sure.
Give them the
So
background story on that.
Sure. There's this group called Accuracy in the Media. They were founded because they thought the U.S. media was too critical of the Vietnam War. And in the intervening 60 years, their takes have not gotten much better. But they have, in Columbia and Harvard, where student groups issued statements in support of Palestinian rights, they drive around with these billboards, like these mobile billboard trucks that name college students by name. I don't know what other information they have on them, and call them leading anti-Semites or terrorist supporters or things like that. And these are 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old college students. But on top of that, a lot of the people who are being featured on these billboard trucks didn't actually have anything to do with the statements that were published. They didn't sign them. They weren't involved in signing them. I think I saw one story about someone who wasn't even at the school. When the statement was released, and lo and behold, those people, it's a lot of Arab and Muslim students. They're just riding around with the names of random Arab and Muslim students, being like, this person is a terrorist supporter, this person is that. It's a real dark attempt at trying to intimidate and arguably incite people against this. And you imagine you're 19 and your name is plastered on a truck. Riding around Boston Commons is like leading Boston anti-Semite, leading Boston terrorist supporter, especially if you didn't even do anything. I mean, not that, supporting Palestinian rights makes this right. I'm not really sure on what issue it would be correct, if any, to, ride around and harass people like this. I would never endorse a tactic like this on our side. And it's just pure intimidation. And, I know a college student who is not currently at his school. He has a medical condition, leukemia, and one of these groups just picked his name off of a website somewhere because he had been to a student group meeting or joined a student group, and just started blasting his picture on Twitter and information about him and accusing him of having signed statements that he hadn't signed. And he called me, and it was really, really scary for him. I mean, I told him that, these people are bullies, people are McCarthy guys, they're going to forget about you in 2 days, probably. But he was really frightened, and the fear is really palpable. But also the courage to keep going is as well. I mean, he was briefly thinking about, maybe he would stop doing public activism, but he hasn't. And he's done a lot of stuff for helping people who are in Gaza talk to U.S. journalists about what's going on, because we don't hear many Palestinian voices. So it's important whenever we talk about the repression to also highlight the determination. Because there are a lot of people who are saying, yeah, it's really scary out there. There's a lot of intimidation, but my conscience compels me to continue to speak out against what's happening. And you know, private groups, you can't control what private groups do, these fringe blacklisted groups, but they have an impact on public policy. I mean, again and again, when we look through FBI documents, especially FBI documents about supporters of Palestine, they are taking information from these fringe groups and they are treating them as fact, and they use them to open investigations. I mean, everyone was sort of laughing at the ADL letter that they sent to the universities. They're like, investigate your students for violations of federal terror. It's like, college president cannot investigate you for violating federal anti-terror material support for terrorism law. But, you know, Terry Albury, who was an FBI whistleblower, he was the only black agent in the Twin Cities field office, and he went to jail under the Espionage Act for giving information to the media about these types of policies. I mean, he told The Nation magazine that, you know, when the ADL talks, the FBI listens, and that, you know, the college students, professors themselves, the school administrations can't do it themselves, but they can give names of students, right, to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, or the FBI can say, oh, this group claims these people are violating statutes. Let's open an investigation. I mean, I fought for half a decade with the FBI to get them to declassify a set of surveillance files from a particular Palestinian group, nonviolent, peaceful. They investigated them again, and they kept coming back with, well, the only thing we can find is First Amendment protected activity. And in some of these investigations, they go on these real fringe right-wing websites and treat them as fact and use them to open the investigations. And I actually went and looked at what this website they were getting information from was saying about incidents in the occupied territory and compared it to the State Department, right? And it completely contradicted the claims of the State Department of human rights violations. I'm looking at like specific cases too. So you have this fringe right-wing website that, you know, contradicts the own findings of our State Department's Human Rights Division, and then the FBI is using them to justify opening investigations, really intensive ones with people all around the country, local and federal police, and spending a lot of taxpayer money to investigate people for their pro-Palestinian views. And the other thing that keeps coming up is the revoking visas of students who go to pro-Palestinian protests. And that is, I mean, that's not an idle threat. I don't think probably many people realize this now, but between 1987 and 2007, that's 20 years, 4 presidents, the FBI tried to have 8 people from Los Angeles deported, 7 Palestinian Americans, 1 Kenyan American. They were called the Los Angeles 8, deported essentially for their support for Palestinian rights. And, you know, when the case got going, the FBI director and the government's lawyer freely admitted, had these people been U.S. citizens, they would have committed 0 crime. They would have no jurisdiction here. All they are engaged in is First Amendment protected speech. But they spent 20 years, and they never succeeded, trying to deport them. First, they went after them under this Cold War Act that made it a deportable defense to advocate world communism, because I guess they said the Palestinians are part of world communism. And then they came back with, oh, Palestinians aren't terrorists, or aren't communists, they're terrorists, right? And by the time this case was still going on in 2007, they were retroactively applying the Patriot Act, right? A law that didn't even exist in 1987 when Ronald Reagan's FBI got this going. And they had FISA warrants, they had wiretaps, they brought secret evidence into an immigration court, and you know, and the courts kept striking this down and saying what you're doing is unconstitutional. So eventually, the Clinton administration passed the law which took or limited the federal judiciary's ability to review the decisions of immigration courts. I don't think most people realize this, but immigration courts aren't part of the court system our Constitution sets up. They're considered administrative courts, which is why, Hoover loved immigration law, and the FBI still does, because there's less constitutional protections, there's less due process, because they are not courts in the sense that you or I would think about them, even though they're called immigration courts. So this manipulation of immigration process, this manipulation of false claims of terrorism, there's a lot of concerns about, the FBI is visiting Muslim and Arab Americans across the country and interviewing them. And of course, that happened after 9/11. That also happened in 1990 and 1991 after the first Gulf War. It was a huge scandal at the time, but all of the other surveillance scandals, all of the other Islamophobia scandals since then, it's kind of been forgotten from memory. But you had the FBI in the run-up to the first Gulf War visiting Arab Americans at their homes. And the first thing the ACLU said was, well, how do they know where all these Arab Americans live, right? Is there some sort of FBI program where they're doing racial and demographic mapping? Right. Well, how do they even know where random Arab Americans live? And they would come and they would ask them not just about the first Gulf War, not just about Saddam Hussein, but they'd start asking them their views on Palestine. So these are really old tactics that we're going to see take on new life. And I do think there has been a sea change. And I think when you see the sort of Beltway media, Beltway politicians who are so stuck on sort of, we have to support Israel no matter what it does, no crime too gruesome for us to ignore, and you have hundreds of thousands of people across this country saying, we don't want this. This is not in our name. You're going to see them rely more and more on these tactics. I mean, that's one of the sort of things about political oppression. It oftentimes follows movements that are politically popular or on the uprise. People sort of always treat it as, well, this group of dissenters is popular. It was a mob mentality. But oftentimes it's people who are making traction, people who are making gains, who they come for.
Every action merits an equal and opposite reaction. Simple law of science, of physics. Chip Gibbons defending rights and dissent. You've got to come back. I know that you have so much, but I didn't get a chance to even ask you about what's happening at the State Department and at the White House. People at the White House who said, we wanted to say, hey, killing Palestinian children, I don't think we should be signing up for that. And they reported you could hear a pin drop. So if you're getting that kind of pushback at the White House, whoa, that's the apex of power in the United States, at least publicly. That's a big deal.
But it's also a big deal that you have people pushing back in the White House and the State Department. And we've had Israel military actions against Gaza, massacres of Palestinians in Gaza multiple times over the last 15 years. And this is the first time I remember people really, really pushing back within the quarter of the power. There is a new group of people who have gone to politics who will not accept this.
Chip Gibbons defending
what happens to them, I don't know.
I don't know, but something's going on. We have Mael Safer and Noah Grajewski. Mr. Safer has lost 39 members of his family in Gaza. We'll talk with them about that, but they're part of a group of Jews and Palestinians who've come together in Portland, and we're going to make that happen all across the country. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, I mean, you are the best, Chip Gibbons. Ooh. Wow.
I tell you what, I always look at the time slot and I'm like, that's a long time. I don't think I can talk for that long. And then the next thing I hear the music's coming on, I'm like, oh, actually I can talk for that long very easily.
No, but you don't talk. It is a narrative. It's like you're telling stories.
Oh, yeah.
And that is so captivating. I mean, you are absolutely brilliant. And I thank you for the work that you do. because the pay is not great. I mean, you can make it, but the thing is, the rewards are great in over time. Over time, you asked me about my parents. I think that there is some sense of my father's in a lot of pain about what's going on because he just sees all of
I
this,
can imagine.
all of this death is just, and with the Parkinson's now, it has really severely impacted his speech. And he wishes he could say something. He wishes he could go over there and do something. But my mother said, this is so big. Not that you could not have impact. She said, but the work. And I said, the work that you all have done, because my mother will say, the work that you've done. I said, no, because my mother went to Lebanon to meet with Arafat first. I met him at the World Youth Festival in 78. Then my mother went to meet with Yasser Arafat. And in fact, I tell this story a lot, but I just think people need to know. My mother had taken her women's group over to Lebanon to meet Chairman Arafat. And the hostages were taken in Iran. And so Chairman Arafat spoke with the Ayatollah, and the Ayatollah said, if she comes to Tehran, we'll give all of the hostages to her and to her group. President Carter had a fit, Chip. And he kept calling my parents' house, telling my father they're going to kill her. That was awful, awful. And my mother said, I don't think they're going to let anything happen to me. We can get them all home, like right now. My father said, Jackie, you need to get home. Because it was Thanksgiving, too. He said, you need to get home. You need to get home. This call.
Hi, Miss Jackson.
Yes.
We have 2 minutes left, and we have Miss
Miss
Krajewski.
Yeah, I know you're.
Yes. And Mr. Saker.
Yes. It's a lot. I mean, and so the compromise was to let the black people and the women go. He said, well, if she's not going to come here, this is what we will do.
Yeah, I do have to run, but I absolutely know that your father and your mother have been very responsible for freeing hostages multiple times over the last, I don't know how many decades. And, whenever I hear about the hostages Hamas has, I always think about, well, I've Reverend, back at, he got a lot of people out of places. I'm sure he's thinking that too, but he needs to stay where he is. But that thought has crossed my mind once a day for the last 22 days that, this is the type of thing your father used to fix.
Well, please let him go. We want to keep it going.
No, I know. I won't say that to him. I won't say that to him. But I will say that. I will say that to you. I will say that to you. Yeah.
That is what's going through his mind because he feels he could do something that could help.
I know it is. And I'm not going to encourage it.
30 seconds.
I've certainly had that thought more days than not the last 22 days. All right, I have to run. It was a pleasure doing the show. The next segment sounds really powerful.
Oh, thank you so much. Love. Ms. Barjewski, my dear sister, and Mr. Saket, how are you? My dear brother, how are you all today?
I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. I did not see the news yet to see how I am doing today. We are Palestinians, have been suffering with the massive.
Stand by.
Well, hold that thought.
How many?
I'm about to bring you right up. I'm about to
bring you right up. Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey everybody, back with the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. My morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody like and share. What's happening in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel? There are real life consequences to this. Entire families are being wiped out. Loved ones are being held hostage. But can you imagine losing your entire family? What about the head of Al Jazeera in Gaza, who was reporting that he finds out that his family has been attacked, and then he finds out they're dead? I don't even know how anyone holds on to their sanity, even as you are deeply rooted in your religious tradition, if you are. The shock of that is devastating. The shock of that is devastating. Um, and the worry over your loved one being held hostage or being a prisoner of war, because many people who are being held are members of the IDF. So technically, they're not hostages, they are prisoners of war. That having been said, these are real life consequences, real life heartbreaks. And so I've been very, very blessed to have been able to, and thank you, Will Singer, my dear brother out in Portland. There's a wonderful group, and there was a news conference organized by Portland Jews and Palestinians, activists, scholars. I mean, people who want to come together and lift up their voices together, share their experiences, and really move toward de-escalation, ceasefire, peace, justice, security. And so I'm really blessed and honored today to have two members of that group. They got up real early to be with us today. And of course, one of my family names, Noah Grajewski. You know, I love that name. That's my grandfather's name, my nephew's name. It's just, but of course, they have the masculine version of it when they add the H. But Noah Grajewski, you are part of Portland Jews and Palestinians, and of course, Mael Saker, who is, he said, Palestinian, Gazan, civil engineer, father, grandfather, and you've lost 39 members of your family. Let me start with you, Mr. Saker, and of course to my cousin niece over here, Noah Grajewski, with my family name. I'm going to start with Mr. Saker, if you don't mind. Mr. Saker, I asked you at the top, you know, and I thank you all for coming together as this wonderful group. I said, how are you doing? And you said, I don't know. Please explain.
I don't know exactly. I did not see the news yet to figure out how many more got killed or murdered with a massive civilian killing. I lost 39 members of my family. My cousin Laila, she was 67 years old, sheltered to her sister's rehab after the bombing of the Baptist hospital. That was 500 people got killed there. Mm-hmm. She sheltered along with her husband, children, grandchildren, all of them in her sister's house. They got bombed with a big missile. Everybody got killed except one 8 years old that got survived. He is injured in the head and an eye. And I don't know. I don't know how this child will understand the meaning of love or compassion or peace. It's a very devastated situation. And that's what I feel right now.
How are you coping? I mean, are you part of a religious community? Do you have any family here? I mean, how are you getting through this horror?
It is horror. It's really rough situation. I have good friends around me, supported with them. I work very hard with this group right now, bringing our voice to say enough is enough and ceasefire now. We had been trying to reach out to our senators. Unfortunate, nobody is replying. We are getting together. We are trying to be strong.
No one's responding to you?
No, we tried Senator Merkley, we tried Senator Wyden, we tried Representative Bonamici. We tried everybody in here, and all of them are too busy to answer.
Noah Grajewski, do you have any family who are in Israel, who are in the West Bank, who are in Gaza, who are in that part of the world right now? Do you know anyone who's being held hostage? I mean, Because,
Yes, thank you so much for
yes,
having us this morning. And
of course.
before I respond, I just want to lift up Nael, his story, and that I can't believe that our senators and representatives are too busy to answer the call of their constituents who have lost tens of family members in the past weeks because of the way that our government is funding this war violence, this Israeli war violence against Palestinians. And yes, I do have family. Actually, my family, my Jewish family, has been in the land of Palestine for over 20 generations. Almost nobody has left. So I have hundreds of family members living in Israel. I don't have any family members in Gaza or in the West Bank. My family has the privilege of Israeli citizenship as Jews. And I don't have immediate family members who are being held hostage. But what I can tell you is that I've spent the last 27 days speaking with my cousins who are about 20 years younger than me. They're in their early 20s, who lost some of their best friends on October 7th, who had friends murdered and taken hostage. And I also have cousins fighting in the IDF as reserve soldiers and being sent into Gaza as soldiers who are being conscripted into violence that they, I think, would prefer not to participate in.
We're talking with Noah Grajewski and Mael Saker of Palestinian Jews, of Portland Jews and Palestinians. It's a wonderful group. And in fact, when I was able to speak with Mr. Saker, he said, I want you to get my sister Noah on. Because I think it's important for people to understand that we're family and that there's linkage. And, our fates are tied to one another. Down through the years, I know my father's been vilified and he's been misunderstood, even as he has said more than 40 years ago that Israeli security and Palestinian justice are tied together. But it's biblical, right?
That's right.
We've been promised a seat at the table, but in the presence of your enemy, because that's God's child too. So we are really locked into our opponent. We always have to work it out. That's why we're in the ring together. Where do we go from here? And number one, let me ask you, Noah Grajewski, how are you making it from day to day? Because I have to be honest with you. I grew up, in the civil rights movement, and with a father so prominent in it, I never thought that he'd live past 39, right? So, and I grew up with the Chicago police outside of my home, private security service inside of my home. And I never knew a day where I thought my father would be alive at the end of it. That didn't ease up for me until maybe 20 years ago. It's a heck of a way to grow. It's a heck of a way to grow. But I get the sense that that part of the world, West Bank, Gaza, the largest open air prison in the world, and Israelis feel like they're under siege. I mean, all the time. How do you make it? How are you coping? I mean, like just right now. I mean, I asked Mr. Saker, how are you doing? He said, haven't seen the news yet, so I don't know. Is that kind of ghost sitting on top of you as well?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for asking. Of course, for me, it is different than for Mr. Saker. I have not lost any family members in the last 27 days. It is not the same. My family have access within Israel to bomb shelters. They have access to tap water that they can drink. They have access to food, to gas, to medical supplies and services. In Gaza right now, hospitals have been bombed. The roads to hospitals have been bombed. People are being operated on without anesthesia in the hallways of hospitals. It is not comparable. And yet, it is hard for me to cope. I'm waking up every morning, also like Mr. Saker, listening to the news. My heart is breaking for what is being done in the name of safety to my family, as if murdering and massacring thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of civilians is making my family any safer. I mean, I grew up part of my childhood in Israel, and I have memories of running to bomb shelters and of sleeping in bomb shelters while I heard explosions. And, you know, for me, that was one night of my life or 2 nights of my life, and seeing restaurants explode here and there or seeing buses explode. It's traumatic, but it's nothing in comparison to what is happening to Mr. Saker's family in Gaza. And that experience creates inside of me some level of empathy. It's like I've experienced one tiny drop, and that's enough to know how terrifying and traumatic and devastating night after night after night after night of explosion and death are. And this is being done in my name, and my conscience is heavy. You know, in my Jewish tradition, I'm Jewish and I'm practicing. And in my Jewish tradition, there's a value called pikuach nefesh, which means that we are instructed to save a life at any cost. And there is a text in my tradition that says it is that it is preferable. It says, the Lord of my place, a local official, said to me, "Go kill so-and-so, and if not, I will kill you. What shall I do?" Rabbah said to him, "It is preferable that he should kill you, and you should not kill him. Mm-hmm. Who is to say that your blood is redder than his blood, that your life is worth more than the one he wants you to kill? Perhaps that man's blood is redder." You know, Palestinians are no less human than Israelis. All life is sacred, and each life that is lost is a stain on all of our collective conscience. And I wake heavy each day. And I'm also afraid for my family members, but mainly I am afraid of an endless cycle of violence for my family members, of us never reaching a just and lasting peace. And I hope that will happen.
I think that it can. You know, I think the challenge and the opportunity of this moment is that you have people who have lived under siege and who've had their land stolen from them, quite frankly. But you've had people who've lived under siege. That experience that you've had, you said just a couple of days changed your life. And I think that if we could take what we've experienced historically, whether we experienced it or our ancestors did, I think that's the point, right? And I think Ms. Grajewski and Mr. Saker, I think that's being missed here. The empathy, because when I hear Israeli officials refer to the Palestinians as human animals, it's such racist language as an African American. When our founding documents had us 3/5 human, which made us animals. I'm like, well, you missed something. What your grandparents went through, what your parents went through, you didn't get it. You know, and in God, there's no such thing as social promotion. God doesn't let you move until you've figured out these sets of issues. I mean, so let me just start with you, Mr. Saker. When you hear Palestinians referred to as human animals, how does that make you feel?
Well, it does make me feel really disgusted, really bad. We are a human being, and we are have children as every bit important as any child of the world. We are every 15 minutes a child gets killed. You know, let me ask you, Santita, did you ever hear of occupation being victim? Israel is the only occupation that acts as a victim. Mm-hmm. And of course, it has the right to defend itself, like all the politicians say. How is killing 9,000 civilian people being defend itself? How using the white phosphorus to burn people defending itself? How is being destroying the churches, the hospitals, the schools, the mosque is being defending itself? Mm-hmm. just sickening.
Well, and you see in our own State Department, and even our president doubted the numbers, Noah Grajewski, which was so profoundly insulting. Some people said that he's guilty of genocide denial. And then there are press reports that have come out that the State Department and the White House that those people who say, wait a minute, killing Palestinian children, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't right. They're not allowed to say that in America. And if that's happening at the highest levels of our government, when I look at CNN, they couldn't figure out getting into to talk to a Gazan family. Couldn't figure it out. I said, what are they doing? And I think, you tell me what you think about that, because this coverage has been so one-sided, Ms. Grajewski. Let me start with you, and then Mr. Saketa, which goes to his point.
That's right. Well, one thing that I think is that the U.S. government, our government that we are paying our tax dollars to, is supporting Israel as it is committing this genocide against Palestinians. And it's not only because people in the government are deniers of genocide, though that is what is happening. It is also because the United States has a personal interest in Israel's continued existence, and it has a personal interest in protecting Israel. The United States government sends on average $3.8 billion to Israel's military annually. President Biden has requested $14 billion more in military funding for Israel this year, which will be used to continue to slaughter Palestinian civilians like Mr. Saker's family. The United States has provided Israel with indispensable diplomatic, economic, and military support, totaling more than $115 billion since 1949. The two countries share intelligence on terrorism, nuclear proliferation, and Middle Eastern politics. U.S. companies' substantial cooperation with Israel on information technology has been crucial to Silicon Valley's success. It is a relationship that is based on U.S. tangible interests. And as long as us as U.S. taxpayers are agreeing with that by not taking an active stand against this, it will remain so for the foreseeable future, not to mention Christian Zionism. There are more Christian Zionists in the United States than there are Jewish people on the face of the planet. Mm-hmm. Christian Zionism is a religious ideology that believes that in order for the second coming to occur, Jews need to be in that land. So our government has an interest.
But there's another part to that. Because if you don't become Christian, you will be destroyed. I mean, that's
exactly right. It's not coming from a love. That's right. That's so right. It's not coming from a love for my people and my Jewish people. And the truth is, it doesn't make me feel safe. It doesn't. What makes me feel safe is solidarity and friendship and connection with my Palestinian siblings. What I wanted to say is that, my grandparents and my great-grandparents lived in Palestine before the state of Israel was established for many generations. My grandmother, who was a Syrian Jewish woman who grew up in Palestine, her nanny was a Palestinian Muslim woman who had to leave her home with her children in 1948 during the Nakba, which means catastrophe in Arabic. And my grandmother and her father tried for years to get her nanny and her nanny's family back inside of Israel. She missed her desperately, and they were worried for her family's for her nanny's family's fate. You know, she had a real attachment relationship with this woman who helped raise her whole life, and they could never bring her back. And those are those families that were the neighbors and the friends of my family before the state of Israel was formed. Those are the families that are, many of whom were displaced to Gaza and the West Bank. Those are the families that the U.S. government and the Israeli government, both of whom purport to speak for me, they are killing the children, my generation, but in the families of my grandmother and great-grandmother's friends and neighbors and nannies. And they're our friends. They should be our friends. There is, I believe, a future where we can be liberated and connected to one another. That was true in many ways before 1948. My grandmother speaks about walking through the markets of Jerusalem and freedom of movement, and her close friends who were Palestinian. They lived together in peace. And I believe it can happen again. And the killing must stop. There must be a ceasefire. This cycle of violence is not going to bring peace or safety to any of us.
Mr. Saka, the last 90 seconds belong to you. What do you want us to know?
I demand from every politician to put an immediate ceasefire. I demand a humanitarian path to Gaza. They need water, they need food, they need fuel, and they need medicine. I ask every politician, where is your humanity? I ask them to find your conscience. How many more children got to be killed to be enough and to open your eyes? I really second what Noah said. We need to live in peace. We need to have justice. I would like to see justice and peace in Palestine. What's happening is insane. But there is a hope. Always there is a hope.
Well, you know, my father often says, keep hope alive. And we're going to do that. If you can stay with me for a few minutes on my YouTube channel, people really, really want to hear from you both. And may God bless you. I mean, your witness is so powerful. And I know God can do anything but fail. God can work this out. God can do that. God is too wise to make a mistake and too kind to be cruel. There's a lesson for all of humanity in this moment. You got to get it right. You got to get it right. And you must call out the power structure, the powers that be, who are promoting death. That's what they're doing. This is not a culture of life. And we can work this out. Noah Grajewski, my family name. Mael Saka lost 39 members of his family. They're in eternity, and they're pulling for us to work this out down here. Stay right here on the Santita Jackson YouTube channel. I want to get some great thoughts from these brilliant brothers and sisters of ours from Portland, Jews and Palestinians. They come together. We can all do it. Love you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. When you hear them not calling, when you hear these blocks to ceasefire, my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, was one of the original signatories on the House resolution calling for a ceasefire. And he said to me, you do not know how hard, he said, I didn't know how hard it would be to call for peace here. Now, mind you, 2/3 of the American public want a ceasefire. At least stop. Stop with the shooting. Mr. Saka, let me start with you. You were calling for a ceasefire. Why a ceasefire? If you could speak to these persons who are 97% of the Congress who are not voting for a ceasefire, what would you say to them?
I would say, again, look at your humanity, find your humanity. People are dying. Over 9,000 people got killed so far. Over 600 children got killed. Women got killed. Enough is enough. We need a ceasefire. We need to get water and electricity and food and medicine to the people. I have a sister still there that she depends on insulin in her life. She has no medicine. She has no medicine for the last 20 few days, and she's living miserable. Enough of killing. That's not going to get us anywhere. They're going to accelerate the whole region with war and killing.
Ms. Grajewski, if you could make a case to these people who say no to ceasefire. President Biden is saying no to ceasefire. He's gone as far as saying that, okay, we can have a humanitarian pause, but ceasefire, no. The only people who are making money here are the munitions industry. What would you say?
That's right, Santita. The only people earning money are the munitions industry. I would say stop now. Stop using my Jewish people's trauma and pain for your interest and your benefit. It is sick. Stop using the ways that Jewish people have been killed and have been persecuted to justify killing 9,000, probably many more than 9,000, because people are literally under rubble, unaccounted for. Stop using my people's trauma and pain to kill my Palestinian siblings. Death will not solve death. Murder will not solve murder. This is not about protecting Jewish people. This is about creating endless cycles of war and violence and trauma and pain so that people on the top can profit off of killings of humans that are an entire world to their families and their loved ones. A whole world, just like President Biden, just like if your daughter or son or wife were killed in a bombing. Stop for a moment and think about that, and stop using Jewish pain and Jewish terror as an excuse to justify genocide and killing. It is sickening. Stop.
Why are they doing that? That might seem like, and by what authority are they doing that, Noah? It's such an abuse.
So painful. You know, it's really so painful, and I believe that they are doing it to further United States interests, United States economic and military interests. You know, there was a video clip I saw from many years ago, long before Biden was president of the United States, of him speaking on the floor and saying that Israel is the United States' best investment, that it's an investment, an economic investment that the United States makes for itself. It is for the U.S. economy. It is for the U.S. military and arms industries, for the U.S. military intelligence. I know for a fact that Western world powers are not doing this to protect my Israeli family or my Jewish people. You know, people are confused. My Israeli family members who are there now are terrified, which makes sense because the October 7th killings were very traumatic for them. They're terrified, and they also have a lifetime of war and fear in their bodies and trauma. But what I know for a fact is that keeping an entire dignified people under occupation and trying to wipe them off the face of the earth and trying to push them for a second time in several generations out of their homes. You know, the people who live in Gaza, most of them had to flee their homes in 1948 and became refugees then. And then over half of the Gazan population had to flee North Gaza and go to South Gaza because the Israeli military told them that they were not safe, that they would be associated with terrorist groups if they were in the north. But what I'm hearing from Gazans on the ground is that nowhere is safe. Refugee camps are being bombed. The Jabalia refugee camp was bombed for a second time yesterday. Hundreds of people were killed. We're talking about
the most densely populated place in Gaza, which is one of the most densely populated places in the world to begin with. Not in our name. We need a ceasefire immediately.
But you know what I think? Absolutely. I think what also needs to happen, because I think that in order for us to really get at this, Mael Saker and Noah Grajewski, is to put all this stuff on the table. This unbridled racism, the white racism toward people of color is something we've got to look at. Calling them human animals, saying that they like to live in raw sewage, they like to live this way. I mean, I just, as a Black person, that these are the things that have been said about Black people in the United States. This is what has been said about Africans. This has been said about Indigenous people everywhere, and it is really stunning. It's stunning, and then you use the Bible to do it. Noah Grajewski, that we have to deal with that. Because I think that's what's so stunning. I mean, because it's a complete betrayal of the highest and best in the Jewish tradition. Because I grew up with Rabbi Heschel. I grew up with,
That's great.
I mean, my father's a seminarian. So I grew up with people from all different faiths. And I want to bring Mr. Saker into this. I grew up with everybody. So you got a chance to see that everybody has their way of doing things and it's all right. And that's something that my father would say constantly. Look, your great aunt said it takes all kinds to make a world, and it does. We all need each other, and we all have something to learn from each other. But it's the racism, the dehumanizing of the Palestinian people. It's really galling. It's stunning. It's stunning, and it's got to be called out. It's got to be dealt with. I mean, I don't think we're gonna, because as of this moment, nothing is going to be the same. Whatever happened before October 7th, nothing. You're not going to be able to go back. You're going to have to. The Palestinians are going to have to be treated justly. Unearned suffering is redemptive. You are not going to be able to wipe out a whole people. And you had an Israeli MP who said, that's how we're going to do this. We're going to erase them all from the face of the earth. I'm like, what, lady, what are you talking about? How do you say this about anybody? This is horrific. This is what they tried to do to you in Germany. Did you not understand? I mean, we lost between 6 and 60 million people in the transatlantic slave trade. That's a lot of folks, Noah. I mean, but if you can just feed meat to the sharks, they're not people, right? Yeah. So, I mean, how do we deal with that? Because that is, I think we've got to put that in the discussion, Noah. So that we can get at the heart of this, because every time I see so many of these officials, I'm afraid of what they're going to say, because they say something that makes me go, did you just say that? Do you know how this sounds? And then I know you, and I know so many of my other Jewish brothers and sisters who are appalled and who are like, what are they saying? I know Phyllis Bennis, I know Medea Benjamin, I know these people. I knew when Anthony Blinken was talking the other day, I said, okay, Medea's going to pop up. I know she's sitting in that audience. I know she's there. And I know she's going to pop up, and they're going to arrest her. And I'm going to call to find out if we need to bail her out. No joke. Because they're cracking down on dissent too. So I don't want her to get stuck in jail. Right? I don't want that to happen. So how do we have that discussion? I mean, these real discussions, because these are discussions, I will say, that Black people are saying in the United States. During the Ferguson protest, and after George Floyd was killed, there was a lot of interaction between young Black kids and Palestinian kids, because they recognized themselves in one another. So how do we move the needle on this? Because we've got to come out of this hole. This is not going to work, what we're doing here, Noah. And I hear your passion. I hear you, and I hear you like, what do we do? I hear it in your voice.
Thank you so much for asking. And I agree with you. Something that's important to understand, for all of us to understand, is that white settler colonial racism and white supremacy are not good for any of us. Israel specifically, Israel's Jewish population is roughly half or more than half comprised of Mizrahi Jews. Mm-hmm. That means Jews who are actually Arab in origin, Jews from Northern Africa and Arab countries. Israel itself, at its own founding, the Zionist forefathers of Israeli ideology, like Theodor Herzl, had internalized a lot of anti-Semitism. A lot of that ideology that founded the state of Israel had internalized white supremacy, had internalized anti-Semitism. The Zionist forefathers that are so often quoted by Zionists came out of European colonial movements that actually hated Jewish people and hated Arab people. And so, white supremacy and colonial ideologies are ideologies that hate Arab Jews, that never loved Jewish people, and that are dangerous, lethal, of course, for Palestinian folks and for African American folks, like beyond lethal. And I think the thing that I really want to say is that so many of my Jewish siblings are very confused. People think that, okay, if you happen to be a white Jew, because there are many Jews in the world that are Jews of color or Arab Jews, but if you happen to be a white Jew, which are the Jews that are prioritized in the media, for example, and in this rhetoric, if you happen to be a white Jew and in this moment you have access to white privilege and the protection of white privilege, and white supremacy is trying to protect you in this moment, if you are a Jew, let's say, as white in this current socio-political context, you might decide to cling to that privilege and to that whiteness, thinking that it will protect you. And I just want to speak to my Jewish siblings here and say that ideology has never protected you. It didn't protect your ancestors in Europe. It isn't protecting the over half of the Jewish population that is Mizrahi, of Arab and Northern African descent. And it is locking us into an endless war machine that is killing our children and that is leaving moral stains on our spirits and souls of dead Palestinians and attacks against an indigenous people and culture that are sacred and beautiful and need to be fought for. This is not protecting us. This is hurting us. It is hurting our spirits. It is not okay to collaborate with people who fundamentally do not care about our safety. It is not okay. They didn't protect our ancestors, and they won't protect us in the end. They're locking us into an endless cycle of violence that is killing my friend Nael Saker's family, that's wiping entire families off of the earth, and that is keeping my Israeli cousins conscripted in a military that is threatening their lives, that is keeping my Israeli family running to bomb shelters. When will it end? It needs to end. We need to find diplomatic solutions, an immediate ceasefire, and a just and sustainable peace in that region.
Mael Saker, what do you want people to know? What do you think is being missed? Because with this unbalanced media coverage, we don't see Gazans. I mean, I think that there have been so many complaints. I actually saw more about Gaza last night on CNN than I have since October 7th. I mean, they have not. I think Wolf Blitzer and company have done a horrible job. They've done a horrible job, and I'm just putting it right there. Horrible. And these are people who I know, who I've met. I don't know him, but I've met him. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like him. But I'm like, I don't like what you're doing over here. I don't like your coverage. Your coverage is awful. And you're not telling their stories. I I want to see the Israeli mothers who are crying and the fathers too. But you know there are Palestinian families who've been wiped off the face of the earth. They cry too. Would you please explain tell me what is being missed in your story?
Um, it is important to understand that there is 75 years of oppression. It's response to collective injustice. They kicked people out of their land, their homes. They made them refugees in the surrounding countries like Lebanon, Syria, Jordan. They lived miserable life. They stole their future. They stole in our culture. Did you hear ever of the Israeli hummus? I'm sorry, this is an Arabic word that even the culture got stolen. Also, I would like to mention that there is 17 years of siege on Gaza. It's an open prison. There is 65 years of 65% of unemployment. There is poverty. There is anger among those people. They cannot live. There is lack of medicine, lack of hospitals, lack of water. It's not just the history written in October 7, which is an awful act that I disagree of suffering and killing of a human being, as even if they are Israelis or Palestinian. But there is a history of oppression and occupation. We need to put a ceasefire. We need to talk to our politicians. It's very important. Every 15 minutes, a child gets killed. It's enough.
Do you think that the fact that you have one child every 15 minutes, more than 3,000 children who've been killed? What is it? Three-quarters of those who've been killed have been women and children. Uh, that's not being told at all. And what about the living conditions in Gaza? Could you describe them?
Yes, I have two sisters in Gaza. They pushed out of their homes. My parents' home, my uncle's home got destroyed. So my two sisters went to the south of Gaza to shelter there. They said this is a place that they can be there, and they live under terrible situation. I called whenever I can. I try to reach him. My nephew, he's 34 years old, and he has 4 children. He was in tears when I was talking to him. He said, "We have no water. We boil the salty water and strain it to get it to our kids." He has no food. They only eat bread and water if it is available. They have no clothes. They left their home without their clothes, without their belongings. My sister, as I mentioned before, she is in terribly sickness because of the diabetic issue, and there is no medicine. When I ask them, "How are you?" they answer me, "We're still alive. We don't know for how long." This is the situation in Gaza.
And raw sewage in the streets.
Yes.
And
yes, and there are over 2,500 people missed under the rubble that they cannot get them out. Can you imagine what kind of diseases this is going to create?
well, they do have outbreaks of skin disease such right now. It's not that people are not clean. I've tried to explain that in the Arab world, people eat with their hands. They eat communally, as they do in many African countries. I mean, people, in the old world tend to be communal, particularly those people of color. So you don't have an individual plate. You get these huge bowls that people eat out of. So you've got to be clean. Your hands have to be clean, but and you've got to be clean. And so to hear these officials, these Israeli officials, refer to these people as being unclean, I said, no, you're not. You don't. They don't have running water. And what's happening over there is a war crime. And as a diabetic, you're supposed to keep insulin cold. How is she doing that? Is she
I'm
able
sorry.
to? No, no, it's okay. I don't want to. I don't want to press you. Oh man,
No, it is.
I just want people to know what you're
She
dealing
feels
with.
so hard.
Hmm.
Yeah, she feels really, really sick, really hard without medicine. Not only my sister, there are a lot of people suffering from cancer, suffering from kidney dialysis, that they need a hospital. And the hospital right now are shut down because there is no fuel to get electricity. It's a crime. It is ethnic cleansing. They are trying to clean out the area from the Arab. They are trying to get it as just its Jew state. It's a genocide. What's happening there is terrible, and it's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Well, let's when we get off the air, I want to see if there's anything that we can do to try and get you before someone. Is You said your senators are not responding. What about the people from the lower house? Your U.S. representatives from the lower house in Congress, are they responding to you at all, Mr.
No,
Saka, Ms.
yesterday
Grace?
we had okay.
Oh, no, 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 Mr.
We
Saka.
had this.
Uh-huh.
I said yesterday we had a small demonstration in front of Bonamici House Representative. We had signed over 250 people signed a petition to put a ceasefire. The security refused to get us into her office. Her office is closed, and no response. So we have to keep trying. I really appreciate the opportunity that you give us to speak up and to see how human being, as far as Palestinian and Jewish, both of us asking for ceasefire and ask for immediate humanitarian path.
Well, I tell you, you both have been so compelling today. I hope that you will consider this show to be a home for you. So, and you have my number.
Thank
So,
you.
oh no, no, please, if you just want to weigh in, if there's something that because I have panels every day, but I wanted to feature you specifically in this segment because I want people to hear you, and people need to hear you.
Thank you so much. Can I add one quick thing, Santita?
I was going to ask you if there's anything that's been left unsaid. Please say it. Okay.
Well, I actually, the only thing I want to say is that I hope that for all of the listeners this morning, as you're on your way to work, I hope that you are well fed. I hope that you've had access to potable tap water. I hope that your children are safe. I hope that you'll let your heart break listening to Mr. Soccer speak about what is happening to his family. I hope that you'll let yourself imagine that this could be your sister, that these could be your nieces and nephews. I hope that you won't just tuck this away. Like, it is so easy to do for so many of us Americans to hear something devastating, in the morning on the news, and then to just go on with our relative comfort and to just sort of forget or to feel like it is enough that we heard or that we bore witness. I hope that you will call your Congress people. I hope that you will call your Congress people and that you will demand an immediate ceasefire. that you will demand a diplomatic response that protects Palestinian lives and that fundamentally protects Jews and Israeli lives as well. I hope that you will demand a just and lasting peace. I hope you will demand an immediate ceasefire. Over 420 children are being murdered in Gaza every day, according to UNICEF. I hope that you will imagine that these children are just as precious and important as your children. What would you do if this was happening to your children? Please do that. Please call Congress. Please tell your friends to call Congress. Please don't let this just fade away, into the news cycle, something that you heard about and did nothing about. These are beautiful, important, sacred people. Please do something.
Is it, as I listen to Mr. Soccer, and to you, both of you, my heart just breaks, but I can hear, because these are his cousins who are there, who are living under siege, and you've got your family living in fear. But you said, at least my family has Israeli citizenship as a privilege, and
that's right.
And the Palestinians don't have that. They don't. They have none of that, and they are
right.
When you have a government saying that we want to erase you, I said, but you heard that 75 years ago. You know where that goes. There was a man, Mr. Hank Schwab. He was a member of the Rainbow Push Coalition, and he would be at our Saturday morning meetings, occupying the seat in the front row. It's 3 sections, and it's a converted synagogue, as a matter of fact. And he would be in that first seat, and when I'd walk in, I'd give Mr. Schwab a hug and a kiss, and he would give me. I'm a singer in the other part of my life, so he would give me CDs, Marian Anderson, all these people. Oh, you must listen to her. Oh, you must. He was an immigrant. He was a Holocaust survivor. He said, you must listen to her. You must come to my home. He was in this beautiful retirement home. And I want you to give concerts. Give people hope and make them feel good. So I did do that. God bless him. And he was like, we're going to pay you. And I said, no, Mr. Schwab, no, please don't do that. Please, please, please. And he insisted, and I just never cashed the check. he was so dear, but he was there every Saturday. And he and my brother, Congressman Jackson, were particularly close, and I grew particularly close to him too. Jonathan would pick him up at 9 o'clock. They'd have breakfast, and then they'd be at Push by about 9:45. And he said, Mr. Schwab, and Jonathan called me one day. He said, you should talk to him and ask him why he's at Push every Saturday. He doesn't miss it. Doesn't miss a Saturday. He doesn't miss a demonstration. He'll be on his cane marching with us. He just died about 5 years ago. And he said, why are you here every Saturday? Why are you so passionate? What drives you? He said, because I survived the Holocaust. He said, not just survived it. He said, Jonathan, I experienced it. There's a difference. When you survived it, you kind of put it behind you. No. He carried that with him, Mael and Noah, every single day. He said, and when I got to the United States and I saw what was happening to Black people, I said, whoa, wait a minute. I just left this. I can't let this stand. So he dedicated the rest of his life to the civil and human rights struggle. And I guess all I'm asking for people to do is to not relinquish your lineage. We all have this in our backgrounds. And Jewish people and Palestinians, and I just don't want the hurt that anyone has experienced to manifest itself in the hurting of others. And that's what happens. That's a very human part of what we're seeing too. Because the viciousness that you're seeing is a result of these people who've been hurt and they never learned the lessons. So they now are hurting everybody else and they're killing everybody else. We are It's a collective punishment. And Jimmy Carter said, we are not going to have a pathway to peace as we're killing each other's children. And Jimmy Carter said, there is no military solution to this, Mael and Noah. It's diplomacy. You must have a ceasefire. You must have peace. That's it. And oh boy, it's just, it's a lot. But I think, my religion teaches me that there's nothing too hard for God. And the book of Revelation has also shown me that God has already won. And when I have my great getting up morning, as my great grandmother and my forebears in the African American experience used to say, I just want God to know and to be able to say, or just whisper in my ear or give me a sign that I was on God's side. And I thank God for you, Mael, and you, Noah, for your powerful witness and for your being on God's side, fighting for the least of these. And you keep up the fight and know that you have a home here. Know that. Because I want you to tell your stories over and over and over again until it changes someone's mind and inclines someone's heart in another direction, or pushes someone to call a congressman today, call the White House today. The State Department should allow people who dissent with our policy of killing these people, of allowing this genocide to go forward. You got to call them and tell them, no, not in my name and not with my money. It's happening at the White House. They can't talk either, Mael. I mean, these are news reports. They can't speak up. And that's a horrible thing. Mael?
Yes.
This is,
I would like to say I do appreciate everything you said and Noah said. We are telling the truth. We are telling you what's happening there. And everybody has to do their job of calling their politicians, calling their elected officials. Personally, I would like to end with one very small, simple sentence. I would like to see justice for Palestine.
mm-hmm.
Now, how this can happen? This is the question. Is the killing more innocent people is going to bring justice and peace? I don't think so. I think that will get us in more and more depth in the crime and in the genocide and in the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people and in the injustice of the world.
If I may ask you, is there? I just want to make sure you're talking to people and you're getting all the support that you need, because this kind of stress, this is a lot to deal with, Mr. Saker. This is a lot.
It is. It is. It is very stressful. It is very sensitive and critical time that we go through. I am supported with very loving family, my wife, my kids, my friends. I get a lot of support, a lot of phone calls. I just made my mind that I have to bring all this sadness and this anger in my heart to positive actions, to try to tell people the story and to tell them that this is not fair. Try to tell people that ceasefire has to come and be now. I try to tell people that my people in there needs water, fuel, electricity, food, medicine. I think everybody has to look for their side. Where is the humanity? This is the question we need to ask everybody. I think I have enough friends and support from family. I appreciate your asking about that. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Because I know Noah can hear it too. I'm, trying to approach you as sensitively as I can, because every time I ask you a question, I hear your breathing. And it connects our hearts to one another, quite frankly. And as several of my listeners have said, this has been hard to hear. But this is the human side of this story, everybody. You know, we've been watching the news and we catch snippets, we catch clips. People are living, people are standing in line trying to get some bread and they're being bombed. They were told to go to the refugee camps. They went there. They're being bombed in the refugee camps because we're trying to find someone in the tunnel underneath the refugee camp. Then why are you sending them to the refugee camp if you know underneath the refugee camp is a tunnel? No one's asking the basic question, why was the IDF, why didn't they respond for 6 or 7 hours? Why the ultimate aims of of the right-wing government of Israel being achieved right now? The wiping out of Gaza so that they can have access to it. Why is that happening now? Why is America almost at war with Iran? And Noah and Mael, there will be blowback because if Americans get involved in one more war, and wait a minute, and when the war visits here, because that's what's going to happen with this one, if we get into it, the blowback, I would say, on the Jewish community is going to be awful. And that's what frightens me, Noah, because there's always blowback. I mean, because Charlottesville shocked me. I'm like, I thought they were saying you will not replace us. I didn't know they were saying Jews will not replace us. I'm like, well, what is that? I was in Washington staying at my parents' home. My mother got upset and pulled the cable out because she felt that it was too expensive. So it took me like a day to really catch up with the story. And I said, there's something that's been floating out here for a minute. And we need to understand this because we are going to be at each other's throats. We already had an act of terror. A 6-year-old Palestinian American boy, Wa'id al-Yume, he was killed by his white neighbor who'd gotten so amped up on right-wing radio that's hate-filled that this man who had treated him like a grandson came in with a military knife, a serrated military knife, and stabbed this boy at least 26 times. There was nothing left of this child. That's the first act of terror on our soil. Come on, everybody. We can make a change, and we can make the change. But hear Mael and his story. You can't have hot insulin, everybody. It needs to be refrigerated. For example, women are having cesarean sections on the floor in the hospital, no anesthesia. Yeah, it's as horrific as it sounds. It's as inhumane. It's as inhumane as it sounds. It's not crazy, it's wicked, it's evil. And there is such a thing as evil. So I'm going, once again, I'm going to ask each of you, I'm going to ask you, Noah, is there anything else you would like to say, my dear sister?
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to start by saying that I'm sending an energy of protection towards Gaza and towards the West Bank, where settlers are also murdering Palestinians with the support of the Israeli government. I want to send protection, and I want to ask that we all act from where we are and that we do not forget this conversation, and that every day we do something to stop this. And the other thing I want to say is that, Western and colonial forces like the United States have pit my people and the L's people against each other. It's like very convenient in a way for these two groups of people that have been hated by white supremacists and have been hated throughout history, and to be in the same region and funded by the U.S. to kill one another and to be in danger. And it's a trap for my Jewish people also, in the sense that we are engaging in immoral and devastating acts through the Israeli government of killing and mass killing and genocide of Palestinian people and cultures. And it's also a trap because it entraps us in endless cycles of trauma and violence. And we are taking out our fear of anti-Semitism. We're taking it out on the wrong people. Of course, we shouldn't take it out on anybody. I'm not promoting violence, but what I'm saying is like, Palestinian people, Palestinian Arabs, Palestinian Muslims, and Christians are our friends. They are our friends. My Jewish ancestors who lived in that region for hundreds of years were literally friends with Palestinian Christians and Muslims, and were treated in dignified and respectable ways by Palestinian Muslims, unlike what Europeans did to Jews. Palestinians have been our friends, and we need to protect them at all costs. And killing somebody does not make the murder of our children go away. Like, murder doesn't erase murder. It all needs to stop. We need a ceasefire now. We need to demand that our Congress people push our government to move towards a diplomatic solution that stops the violence immediately and that offers reparation and support and justice to the Palestinian people, and that offers a viable future where Palestinians and Jewish Israelis can live together with peace and justice. And I believe that this is possible, but a ceasefire must come immediately. Thank you.
Amen. Mael, the final word belongs to you.
I would like to thank you, Santita, for accepting us in your show. It's really nice, make me feel better that I am around with good people. I would like to thank Noah for everything she said. This is the right way of living side by side. We Palestinians suffered enough from occupation, from humiliation, from the jail, being in jail, from killing, from the massive killing, from the ethnic cleansing. We know how hard it is to live and suffer. So we are asking for immediate ceasefire to stop this crazy, this is unhuman acts. Unfortunately, yesterday the United States of America, the only country, voted veto in the United Nations against entering humanitarian aid to Gaza. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Can you believe that we are the only country in the world against entering the fuel and the water and the medicine and food to Gaza? We have to do everything we can to stop that, and that starts with one act right now: is ceasefire now. It is very hard. But we have to go through it, and we have to keep doing what we are doing. Me and Noah and other people, we have a good group of Jewish and Palestinian people that are working together for justice for Palestine. And I hope one day we will live together. Like 75 years ago, Palestinian, there was 80% of them Jewish, 32% Christian, and 60% Muslim. They live together in peace and harmony. The Zionism movement got us to get to this situation of being refugees in other countries, living in tents, living in poorness, living under really bad situation. This has to be stopped. It's not only a few days issue. It is a history of oppression for Palestinian people. Everybody has to do their job. Like Noah said, think about my people, my family, like yours. Think about the young child, 8 years old, that he lives without sister or brother, mother or father, grandfather. He lived by his own. How he gonna grow up? Think about it like he is your child, and what you can do for it. At least call the congressman, call the foreign affairs, call everybody and tell them we need a ceasefire immediately. I thank you, Santita, again.
Oh, no thanks are necessary. That's what we do here. And just know that you have a home here. And whenever either or both of you want to come, know that you are welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Santita. It means a lot.
Sending you so much love, and may God's blessings be upon you both and your families.
Inshallah.
Oh, God bless you. God bless
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you, and yours as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. My loud, raucous family. I'm just glad that I'm grateful for them, and we all love our families. And maybe if we started to understand that, we'd look at this a little bit differently, because families are losing family members every day. I saw the second bombing of this refugee camp, and I saw this man with his head to heaven, screaming because he said, they've killed my 3 babies. Come on, y'all. That's not the way this is supposed to be. And you're paying for it. And as you pay for it, you will pay for it spiritually if you don't stand up. Dr. King told us, you cannot stand by and do nothing when evil is all about you. You just can't do it. It makes you complicit. Your silence is consent. So we've got some work to do, because this is our money. And more than that, it's our world. That's why people all over the world are in the streets marching about this. And we all should be. Because we could easily be the Palestinian. We could easily be the Israeli. We keep switching sides until we get it. So I love you. I love you both. And please let me know if there's anything that I can do. And like I said, I have a brother who's in Congress. He's a freshman, so he's just a lowly little freshman, but he has tried to do some one or two things. And one of those things was signing that ceasefire resolution. And he said, ooh. Because when he was on this show, I said, you do know Karine Jean-Pierre said that your calls for a ceasefire were repugnant. He said, wait a minute, what? Because we know her. He was like, wait. And he said, don't tell me that. Oh, I read the statement. He said, oh, okay. He said, I'm going to call her as soon as I get off this call. I said, okay. If you should. And he did. And he should have. Because that was out of order. So, and this is, and look, we're all going to agree and disagree as we keep on going, everybody, as we keep on growing. We need to be on the right side of this. We need to be on the right side of these issues. We're going to be meeting, of course, we have this migrant town hall meeting so we can stop fixing the blame and start fixing the problem. There are 16 million vacant units of housing in the United States today. That's more than enough space to cure the homeless problem. We have got to stop falling for having the 99% fighting each other and clawing each other to death while the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's not going to work. While fewer and fewer people take more and more of our resources. My pastor said, God rest his soul, before I go, I've never seen God have a vision without making provision. We're God's vision, each one of us. There's enough water for us to drink, enough food for us to eat, enough clothes for us to wear, enough education for us to have access to and to get. There is more than enough in this world for everybody to be satisfied. But it's our own wickedness and evil and greed that gets in the way of that. That makes us feel that some people deserve and other people do not. Everybody deserves access to equal high quality health care. You deserve to get it. Everybody deserves to have a full belly. Everybody deserves never to feel thirst. Everybody deserves to have a nice home to live in. Everybody deserves that because you're God's child. And as God's children, that is our legacy. And we need to fight for each other until everybody gets it. It is ungodly what is happening over there every day. It's ungodly. And I'm just going to go right there because you know what? My audience knows I am a religious woman and I don't play. This is ungodly. It's not right. And don't get angry with people as much as you need to pray for them because they are out of the ways of God and they must be pulled back in. I pray for Benjamin Netanyahu because he's lost. Spiritually, he's a mess. That minister who said that Gazans need to be erased from the face of the earth, she's a mess. She's not right. I didn't say she was just wrong. She's not right. Something's not right about her. So we all spiritually have some work to do. And if you don't care, you're not right. So keep that in mind, everybody. I love you, my sister Noah. I love you, my brother Mael. And just know that you can have me on speed dial. I'm here. Should you need me. I mean that. Should you need me, I'm here. And I want to have you all back because I want people to hear your stories as much as we can. Okay?
Thank you so much.
I'm going to tell my father that I had you all on. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to tell my father I had you on because I know he'll want to. If you're open to it, say hello to him. I know he would like to do that very much.
Of course. That would be wonderful. Thank you.
It'll have to be. Oh, bless your heart. It'll have to be early because his Parkinson's, they have something called the sunset syndrome. And early in the day, he's strong. He rises with the sun and he goes down with the going down of the same. But he keeps on talking, and you're like, Dad, I can't understand you. And he just keeps on going. It's just the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. And I was just with him and my mother until late last night. I was like, Daddy, you just keep on talking. And my mother said, she just looked at me. She said, he won't stop. My parents have been together 62 years. So there's that dynamic. I'm like, oh gosh, let me get out of here before I hear some more, what is it? The Hatfields and the McCoys in one couple. But God bless them.
Santita, what a blessing to have a father who has the privilege to live into old age long enough that he can experience the symptoms of old age. And as you know, my deepest prayer and wish is that everybody's father and everybody's mother and everybody's parent can have the blessing to live into old age. And I hope that we all take the actions needed to ensure that a ceasefire comes soon and that as few people as possible continue to die.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Because all my life, one of my prayers was that he would be alive to be at the end of the day, to live to see the end of the day. And God gave him length of years. And with length of years came Parkinson's. What you pray for, God will give it to you. But now there's another side of it. And that's okay. I told him, I said, Daddy, you and Parkinson's, I'll take it. I've considered the alternatives. I had to live with it. I want you here. I'll take it. I'll put you on my own back. All 6 feet 3 inches of you, 200 odd pounds. And I'll carry you myself just to keep you here. Because with all of this, every blessing has a challenge. And I know that there is a blessing on the other side of this. We just can't see it now. And I just want you to know that we are all family and we are all praying with you. And I have some mothers who've lost their children to gun violence who've been listening today. And they want to send a special blessing and love and prayers to you, Mael, because they said, I know what it's like to have lost a son, a daughter. And they want you to know that they are praying for you and they thank you for your wise words of Noah. because it's all meant so much to hear your voices today. So I love you both.
Thank you very much.
Now go on and be the rabbi. No, that's what you need to be now. As wise as you are. Girl, get on out of here. I know they block us from these pulpits, but you need to go on and do that. I spoke it. I said it. I'll add more to it before I take anything back. Yeah, you need to do it. Okay. I know she's like, oh, I don't need any more to do. But you've got that vibe, that ministerial vibe. I can't help it. There it is. You do. I don't know. Maybe this is helping to bring that out of you. Okay.
Thank you.
Just saying, my sister. 1 PK to you. I'm just saying. I'm a preacher's kid. I can see it. I can spot it. I can see it. I can always see it. But I want you to know I feel you both today, and I'm loving you, and I thank you for blessing me personally and my audience with your witness and with all that you all have shared today. And I know it's been challenging, but thank you for being selfless enough to share. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Love you much, and I will reach out to you later so I can connect you. I'm going to find out what my dad's doing so he can at least say hello to you.
That will be
Thank you.
And I will appreciate that. I would love to do that.
I'm going to do that. He's in therapy, so I've got to find out because he has to do that just about every day. So let me find out where that what the opening is, and it's going to have to be earlier, like I said, because I want you to be able to understand what he has to say.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
And Robert says shalom.
What an honor.
Oh, absolutely. Bless your heart. And Robert says shalom to you, and everyone is sending you their love and prayers. So God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
God
thank
bless
you very much.
Thank you.
Henry, thank you for a great show. God bless you, everybody. Morning stars, I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show.